Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are on this entire beautiful, crazy planet. Welcome to CannaSphere Africa, where we bring you the latest news happening in the African cannabis industry and also some bits and pieces from around the evolving, exploding, dynamic, and interesting cannabis world. Welcome to today's show. First of all, I'd like to hand you over to my compadre here, who's going to give us the headlines.
Hello, everybody.
What are the headlines?
Right, the headlines today are breakthrough in cannabis rights for the rural communities with the new IK framework. Parent outrage as some children have been hospitalized due to space.
That is not good headline at all. We'll talk about that later.
THC private cannabis club legislation bid now set for June.
Okay, that's good as well.
Zimbabwe hits hemp headwinds with 50-ton export to Switzerland. Yeah.
Nice.
Ukrainian cannabis activists take up arms against Russia.
Yeah, there's lots going on. Also, we're going to chat to Noxy, who's going to. It's time to retire the words indica and sativa from cannabis culture. We've been talking about that for a while, and everyone always flexes that this is an indica or sativa. But the reality is, in the modern day and world we live in, a lot of stuff is hybrid. So we'll unpack that. Jeff is going to unpack cannabinoids, synthetics. Dr. Carmen is talking cannabis and pain, and Cuban Zulu is going to talk high-tech greenhouses and blackout. No, not ESCOM blackout. This is blackout so that your plants can grow nicely. But before we do that, I'd like to welcome our guest on today. He is from Indoor Sun. Kaya, welcome to the program. You guys are the sponsors of this month's program. So just quickly give us a quick lowdown on what is Indoor Sun. Now, you're a lighting company, but give us a bit of background.
Hazard, thanks so much for having me on the CannaSphere. Really happy to be a sponsor. So we're a local LED horticultural lighting company. So we started, myself and my dad, with a passion for cannabis and the knowing of how, difficult it is to use old tech in our climate, with the load shedding, with the exorbitant electricity costing. So we decided to actually go through with making high quality local manufactured LEDs, which can compete on any level from, your average tent grower all the way through to commercial facilities. So we've had some huge success in the Lesotho. We've had success from all the guys using our lighting. The quality of the flower coming out is just phenomenal to see, so we're right up there with that high standard that we've set. So we also prioritize largely on education. So we also do a Green Lab Sessions podcast, which is based on educating people, breaking stigmas, and we get a lot of local artists because we're really firm believers that, we're able to produce and, compete with in the cannabis market at every level. So it's a bit about us in a nutshell.
You guys are doing some great stuff in the industry. I believe you're also busy looking at exporting some stuff at the moment, which is fantastic.
100%. Yeah, we've got a few sites that have inquired with us. We've already sent some lights through to the Netherlands and one of the other sites over there for testing. So quite a lot of these guys have, foreign backing. So they're taking back the tech that they're actually seeing is working here in our climate, which is phenomenal. We are planning to expand, to the outer reaches and put SA on the map in terms of horticultural lighting.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being with us. I know that you're supporting us on the campus in Rivonia as well. So your lights are primo.
Perfect.
Showing some really
it's
good.
Been a blessing. Like I said, we really do highlight education. Obviously just being a LED horticultural lighting company doesn't mean that you can't partake in the community. So we're happy to be a part, and thanks for having us.
Completely. All right. So check out Indoor Sun. Thanks, Kaya. They're our sponsor for this month's show. They've got great lights. It's local, manufactured locally. We've got to support the local industry. So go out and check out their website for Indoor Sun. Right, next we go over to Brett, who's going to give us the headlines. Over to you, Brett.
Welcome to the CannaSphere newsroom in the foothills of Limpopo, where a mild autumn is set in and the leaves are starting to fall from the trees. In the headlines today, a cabinet decision last week may be a game changer for the cannabis industry and the word cannabis wasn't even mentioned in the statement released afterwards. A landmark announcement of a framework to protect indigenous knowledge, or put it this way, the intellectual property of rural communities, was approved and is being put into play. IK, indigenous knowledge, has been one of the sticking points in getting cannabis legislation passed because of the grey area traditional healers and growers operate in. So what's going to happen is this. The IK framework is going to be opened up for public comment, and it's envisaged that a new organisation will be established, NIXO, the National Indigenous Knowledge Support Office, which will regulate and protect the rights of the estimated 350,000 traditional healers in South Africa, and as well as the 900,000 illegal cannabis farmers. NIXO is a mechanism that gives traditional communities a voice to represent them at the cannabis negotiating table and a way of protecting them against biopiracy of their local land races. The whole IK project will reside within the Department of Science and Innovation, and they've been working with the University of the Free State, the Agricultural Research Council, and the University of Pretoria. CSIR head of the African Medicines Project, Dr. Shripeka Chabalala, says research is gaining traction, and the CSIR will be setting up an IK database and will be working with small businesses to develop product. Cannabis is one of 6 African medicines that they're looking at. In Gauteng, there's been parent outrage at a spate of space cake poisonings. 15 grade 12 pupils from 2 West Rand schools were hospitalized last Thursday after eating cannabis-laced edibles, allegedly supplied by a school pupil trying to raise money for his matric dance jacket. The Gauteng Education Department has taken a dim view of the incident. Minister Panyaze Lesufu has warned children not to take substances that may be harmful, and an inquiry is underway. Parents at the Randfontein High School are demanding answers as to how the school let the space cakes incident get out of hand. A pupil has been suspended, and a series of parent meetings are underway this week. What is significant, though, is that disciplinary procedures are likely to take place outside the criminal justice system, as the ConCourt is likely to uphold a ruling soon that kids committing cannabis transgressions should not automatically be handed over to the police. THC Director Neil Liddell is the fall guy for the private cannabis club industry. He's facing trafficking charges after setting up the first legal PCC in South Africa. He's tried to get a High Court hearing to clarify the status of private cannabis clubs for over a year now, and the state keeps kicking it into touch. He's now got a court date for June, at which he's going to argue that his Ottery Grow Club was completely legal and ask the Cape High Court to make a ruling once and for all on the status of private cannabis clubs. There are at least 30 private cannabis clubs operating in South Africa, most on the constitution established by Grow One Africa's Kush Queen, and almost all with the blessing of their local police stations. Lawyers representing Liddell say if the Cannabis for Private Purposes bill is passed before the June court date, the application will fall away as private clubs may well be legalized under the new law. Moving further afield, the Zimbabwe hemp industry appears to be coming into flower. News has come in that the country successfully exported 50 tons of hemp to Switzerland earlier this year. Another 30 tons are in the pipeline. This comes as the head of that country's tobacco board, Meanwhile Gudu, says tobacco farmers should look at hemp or cannabis as alternative crops. He said tobacco consumption was likely to decline by 15% by 2030, whereas the demand for cannabis is growing around the world. He said Zimbabwe's 145,000 tobacco farmers should look at getting a quarter of their income from hemp or cannabis within the next 2 to 3 years and rely less and less on tobacco in the future. And finally, the 2022 version of Give Peace a Chance. Ukrainian cannabis activists have taken up arms against the Russian invaders and are appealing for international assistance. Freedom March, the main pro-legalization movement in Ukraine, says one of its main organizers has been badly wounded in the east, and most of its male supporters are on the front line. Ukraine's biggest cannabis website, Ask Growers, an advice site aimed mostly at the US, says it's maintaining operations even though its staff have been displaced from Kiev and are working from Poland and from Ukraine between their military duties. Kiev's School of Economics is coordinating the fundraising efforts and says money from international cannabis companies is starting to come in. And that's it from the CannaSphere News Desk in Limpopo. Back to you, Trenton.
Yeah, news. I don't really know what to comment. The first thing I want to comment on, though, is why the word poisoning is being used with space cakes. I mean, I don't know the intricate details of exactly what was in there, but the word poisoning is very strong and really, really not what we need in this industry right now. So that's a very disappointing story. But yeah, anyway, let's see how that unfolds. Brett, thanks. I'd love to dig into some of these things, but let's chat at the end of the program. Thanks for that update. We'll see you later. Right now, we're going to cross over to Noxy, who's going to talk about indica and sativa and whether those words have any validity in our industry anymore. Over to you, Noxy.
Good afternoon and lifestyle desk with me, the Kush Queen, bringing you all things local and international cannabis art, news, and lifestyle. As cannabis culture grows, so does the research, and I think this might actually be one of the biggest cultural shifts driven by science, of course. The words sativa and indica are about to officially become extinct. Crazy, right? NAPRA Research and SC Labs have been working together, and they've created a new cannabis classification system for the 2022 awards that promises to bridge the disconnect between culture and science. The blanket terms indica and sativa and hybrid don't really delve into classifying cannabis. It's not only about flavors and aromas, but it's also about terpene and flavonoid profiles. In the coming years, we are going to see cannabis defined into these 6 groups: Jackson Haze, tropical and floral, OGs and gas, sweet dreams, dessert, and exotics. Each of the groups are made up of 3 terpene profiles, with the most dominant 3 found in the cluster of strains, and each of the groups have their own individual effects when consumed. Pretty soon, you're going to be able to walk into a dispensary and say, hey, I'm looking for something that will make me feel calm and relaxed. And your bud tender, if they're any good, might say, okay, let me show you some of our tropicals and florals and some of our sweets and dreams strains, instead of just saying, let me show you some indica. Most of the industry, including many top brands, agree that it is absolutely nonsensical to base purchase decisions solely on the content of THC, and I totally agree. What if the weed is brown and harsh, but has high THC content? Judges of beer and wine competitions evaluate much more than just the alcohol content to define what makes the best beer or the best wine. Consumers and judges alike observe qualities like color, smell, flavor, and taste above alcohol content to decide what is the best. Cannabis is a massive industry, and it's only fair that we follow suit with the classification models of beer, wine, and even chocolate. The classification system will evolve with the market as more and more subtle differences define a class. More and more classes will emerge. Trenton, I feel like this is such a big topic that we just can't put it into like one segment. I am like totally thinking of doing a whole series on each of the different groups because my mind is blown.
Yeah, let's scrap the rest of the show and you and I can just talk and pontificate for a bit of time. I think it's fantastic. I think this is an evolution into a new space. Yeah. So I mean, I'm sure people debating. Yeah, I'm sure people debating whether those classifications are 100%, and there's be the naysayers and the haters, but ultimately 100%. We need to move forward. We need to be more scientific. Terpene profile is absolutely important in terms of the feel that you get from the cannabis. So it's a great step forward. Noxy, we'll see you a bit later. Let's cross over to Jeff, who's going to talk about something completely different, about cannabinoid synthetics. Jeff, over to you.
So for everyone who's obviously been tracking cannabinoids, you'll be familiar with when we refer to cannabinoids are typically phytocannabinoids. And those that study the body and biochemistry will also know about endocannabinoids, which are essentially anandamide and 2-AG that are in the body. But the aspect that's really interesting is how synthetic cannabinoids came into play. And this is from a range of different products where they've named after the actual authors. So HU synthetics are usually from the university, the Hebrew University. So Raphael Moshulam, things like JWH is John Hoffman. And basically the point of these synthetic cannabinoids initially was to enable research when there wasn't a lot of allowance for research into cannabinoids. And since it's been commercialized in terms of synthetics, being dronabinol and the rest, we've seen illicit products start to enter the markets. And these illicit cannabinoids is really what is quite scary because they are analogs for THC and they bind often more effectively to the CB1 receptor in the body, causing a longer or more strong sustained high or at a lower dose. And by manipulating these half-lives of these molecules, you can actually start to change the way a cannabinoid would be experienced. Not that we can always call them cannabinoids, but because they act on the CB1 receptor, they're often classified as synthetic cannabinoids. Now, in international news, it's been seen that in Europe, more than 300,000 patients will benefit from medicinal cannabis in this year. This is still a low number considering more than half of Europe, Eastern and Western Europe, is in favor for some form of adult use cannabis allowance. And then New Mexico has been the biggest winner in the state in the last month since the start of April, where they've seen the massive sales for the first adult use in New Mexico. A lot of these companies are claiming that it's the guys from Texas that are crossing the border into New Mexico to get their adult use, even though it's medically allowed for in the state of Texas. But we know the history when it comes to Texas and allowances. Back to you, Trenton.
It's so fascinating to look at America, which is such a contrast, because on the one hand, you've got like California, which is completely open, and then other states, which are just, it's like all these different countries. We always look at America as one country, but essentially anybody who's been there really understands that it's literally a bunch of countries, you know? So it's interesting to see how different things are. But I mean, how long do you think it's going to take for things to really sweep across? What are your opinion on Biden and his decision that he's going to make in the next few weeks? Do you think he's going to legislate it across the country?
I mean, it's been before that legislation has gone through the House of Representatives. So the Moore Act is essentially gone through the House of Representatives. It's likely to be shot down by the Senate because usually the Senate has a longer standing membership. So it tends to be a little more Republican. It has changed over the years, and every 2 years there's a revote on certain senators. But if it gets through the Senate, then it will be up to Biden. There's also a lot of arguments to be made in terms of the DEA, because the head of the DEA can schedule any narcotic, which means there is a scope. It's not that easy, but we should petition the head of the DEA to reschedule cannabis more so than Biden. There's some conflict in laws, but it's also somewhere where I don't see enough lobbying. It's the head of the DEA who decides what's a narcotic. So why not tackle that as a first point?
Yeah, complexity is all over the world, even in countries that have this massive kind of cannabis industry that's super developed. Thanks, Jeff. We'll see you again next week. Right now, we're going to cross over to Dr. Carmen, who's going to talk about cannabis and pain.
Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Carmen. Today we're going to be talking about chronic pain syndromes, and this includes conditions like rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, diabetic neuropathy, and mechanical back pain. These conditions are particularly difficult to treat and require patients to take a cocktail of pain medications, antidepressants, anti-inflammatories, and even new drugs known as biologicals, which actually impact the immune system. They can be effective in some patients, but because of the way they interact with the immune system, they can put people at risk for things like infections and even certain cancers. Now, a study published in the Pain Research Management Journal evaluated the effectiveness of medical cannabis on pain level and quality of sleep among patients in a rheumatology outpatient department. The study evaluated 319 patients with a wide range of chronic pain syndromes who had access to medical cannabis. And the results showed that there was a mean improvement in pain across the spectrum of disorders of between 57 to 83%, and a mean improvement in sleep quality of between 71 and 87%. The study highlighted the importance of the duration of medical cannabis use. And this is because it gives patients an opportunity to try different varieties of cannabis and at different doses in order to find improvement for their specific symptoms. And the study concluded that medical cannabis has a favorable effect on pain level and sleep quality among nearly the entire spectrum of resistant chronic pain syndromes that were seen in the rheumatology clinics, including inflammatory diseases that were resistant to biological treatments.
Thanks, Dr. Carmen, always sharing some magical words of wisdom when it comes to medicine and cannabis. Very exciting how things are going to revolutionize. But I think one thing we've got to keep in mind is that while we're all excited about the cannabis space, there are huge industries that are going to be disrupted by industrial hemp, by medical cannabis. And those industries are multi-billion-dollar industries that are going to take some time to come around. So we have work to do, but thanks for that. Right, we're going to cross over to Cuban, who's going to talk about blackout. We're not talking about the load shedding that's coming up, but about high-tech greenhouses and blacking them out. Over to you, Mr. Cuban Zulu.
Hello, cannabis community. I'm Kwanda, the Cuban Zulu, coming to you live from CannaSphere's Growth Desk. Today, I want to speak about high-tech greenhouses and light deprivation, their benefits, basically. So firstly, a high-tech greenhouse is a greenhouse that basically has all the bells and whistles. You've got full control over your climate. You've got automated equipment and so forth. So basically, what you can establish in a high-tech light deprivation greenhouses, you can have 3 to 5 harvests per year because of the control you have over the photo periods of your plants. A sealed greenhouse allows one to conduct research and development on cultivars without risking pollination from other outdoor farms. As well, using the light depth for flowering helps you get high quality strains, because the darker your night period is, the better. Basically, you can develop a much higher quantity of trichomes and get a wider coverage on your buds. And lastly, you can create your start of the day early in a light depth, high tech greenhouse, which will help you get your plants bigger, which obviously leads to a much higher yield at the end of the day.
Great, thanks, Cuban. I know that's also with blackouts. There are some people who basically, that's obviously a high-tech version of blackout, but I've seen guys who pull tarpaulins over their greenhouses, and there's all kinds of different ways, yeah?
Yes, of course. I mean, that light depth part of it is just one of the elements in your high-tech greenhouse, but making use of light deprivation allows you to get more harvest in a year, and it allows you to get a much higher quality of cannabis out. So yeah.
Great, thanks for that. We'll see you next week. Have a good day. Cool, brings us to the end of the show. Are you happy? Are you happy, guys? Are you happy it's the end of the show?
What a toucher. Well done, guys.
Did we cover enough stuff?
The show.
Yeah, it seems so fast.
I know, right?
All this information. Yeah, don't forget that we actually put out cannabis shorts, which we do each section, so you can check it out. We've got a comment here. The new model shows that cannabis market is maturing. What it will be like in 10 years, who knows? This is from Nigel. Thanks for your input, Nigel. The industry is moving so fast that, I mean, we're entering a new era of not just cannabis, but plant medicine as a whole, with psilocybin and all kinds of other indigenous systems. So I'm really happy to hear about, was it Nixo being set up, Brett? I think it's going to have a big impact on protecting our local sort of knowledge and IP.
Yeah, and I think it's a new era in African botanical medicine that's beginning.
Absolutely, and we can export that as well. We don't just have to export cannabis, Cool. I think that's it. Anything else?
No, that's it from us. Nice to see you guys.
Right.
See you next week.
Don't forget to subscribe and do all those things, and watch the space for anything to do with African cannabis news.